Dear friends, good evening. Thank you for joining us once again this week to another Gnostic Live of Practical Application. Tonight, our subject matter is titled Mind and Silence. And we are going to dedicate our exercise tonight just for the conversation in the Chinese concept of Mo Chao. Mo Chao is something that we have already covered in our seminar of meditation. Mo is serenity. And Chao is reflection. And because we are so comfortable making things easy, we would immediately say, oh, Mo Chao is serene reflection. But no. When it comes to this serenity is something very profound. Because I want you to think that for us to be in a condition of serenity, there are specific conditions that must be satisfied within our own selves. We know that in terms of the human machine, we have 5 cylinders. And for us to be serene, the 5 cylinders in the human machine must exist in harmony. That means that you must have not abused during the day of your motor center. If you had been working outside, doing some strenuous work in the backyard under the rays of the sun and the heat, and you expose your body to some dehydration, well, I will have to tell you that that motor center may not be in its optimal condition. But what about the instinctive center? Well, we know that the instinctive center is the one that deals with fighting and fleeing. But it is not just fighting and fleeing. The instinctive center is intimately related, associated with our autonomous nervous system. We know that our nervous system is divided in 3. We learned this when we spoke of chakras some time ago. The main element of our nervous system is the central nervous system itself. Combination of the brain, the spine, and those 13 primary ramifications of nerves that radiate out of the spine at different locations of the spine. But then we have the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the one that deals with the fight and the flee. And then we have the grand sympathetic nervous system. This one deals with resting and digesting. So during the day, if we have not slept correctly, we have not given the body an opportunity to recover, which of course affects the motor center, but it has also affected the ability of that grand sympathetic system to do its job. If during the day we have found ourselves in a situation where we are still stuck in a problem, where we had some argument, where we saw ourselves threatened, where part of our existence, whether real or perceived, was threatened, well, that parasympathetic system used a lot of energy. So from that perspective, then the instinctive center will also be out of balance. And what can we say about the sexual center? Well, the sexual center is the one that is feeding energy to all of these functions. So if the motor center is affected, well, yes, we have drained that sexual cylinder. If the instinctive center has been out of whack during the day because we have been dealing with chaos, well, then the sexual center has been drained as well. But let's say that you rested today and that you slept well and that you had no arguments. So what about if we watched some pornography? At that moment, you may have not taken any action. But the moment that you expose yourself to that, we are empowering many of those psychological aggregates to start draining of that sexual center. And of course, that creative energy starts going through the body. But instead of being routed through the channels that it is meant to go, it just goes down other channels. And what have we known from Master Samael? That he says, everything that is out of its orbit creates a problem. Fire is good in the kitchen, but fire in the living room has a problem. Water is good in the kitchen sink, but water in the living room, that is a problem. The same thing happens with our sexual creative energy. So we must observe during the day what is happening with our sexual creative energy. Then what happens with our emotional center? We all know that if we go through an emotionally shocking experience, everything else gets out of balance. We have seen brilliant students who have gone through a rough emotional shock. They get to the test and they fail. Even though they have known all of the material, the emotional shock is so intense that it throws out of whack all the other cylinders. And last, we have an intellectual center. When we catch ourselves dealing with a problem and we have not been able to find a solution to the problem, when that problem has remained there lingering, when we're wondering what is the right action, etc., the fact that that problem has been lingering there, that has thrown the intellectual center out of balance as well. So when it comes to serenity, the key takeaway here is serenity does not mean sit down calmly and look relaxed. That is just on the outside. The 5 cylinders of the human machine, or we can say the 3 brains in the human machine, the intellectual, the emotional, and the motor sexual instinctive, they need to be operating in harmony. This is what brings us serenity. You can be calm, you can be relaxed with your eyes closed, but if your intellectual brain is drifting away dealing with a problem, you can spend 45 minutes or 10 hours in a posture of meditation, and all you have done is be there with your eyes closed. And by now, most of you who have been meditating, you know this to be the truth. If you are sitting there calmly with your eyes closed, but you're still churning on the inside because of inferior emotions that you just don't know how to deal with, well, the same thing happens. You have spent all of that time with your eyes closed, but that has not been an exercise of meditation. So what can we do? The Buddhist tradition, they refer to many of these things as antidotes. And I think that that is a very clever way of referring to it. Because when the intellectual center is out of balance, well, we already know that we can always play some good classical music. And as we relax the body, as we calm down the emotions, the classical music influences the superior emotional center that happens to be in the head. Of course, it also influences the superior intellectual center that is also in the head. And it helps bring about relaxation, calmness, harmony into that intellectual brain. But that is not just it. One of our most beloved instructors said once, whenever someone says, I don't know what to do, deep down they are lying. That, at some point for us, was a really tough pill to swallow. But they were right. Every time we say, I don't know what to do, that is a lie. And the fact is that it may not be an immediately evident lie. But as you calm down and you allow your faculties of imagination, inspiration, and intuition, when you open yourself to the principle of spontaneity, you will come to see that you really know. And that there are many other factors that are coming into play for you to just not do the thing that you know that you should do. In many cases, it is fear of loss. In many cases, it is just a sense of rejection. In many cases, it is people are going to really see what you did. So, when we have to bring about harmony into our intellectual center. Not only we must sincere ourselves within, but we also need to look at what is required to materialize the right solution. Samael says, when you have a problem, don't think about it. And some people have incorrectly translated that as don't do anything. And that is not what he's saying. He is saying, don't waste your intellectual values. You remember the name of those values? They are called Bodbin Caldenos. He's saying, don't be burning of those values uselessly. Simply relax, find that solution, because when you relax, then you can hear the voice of the innermost. And as you can see what the solution is, then gird yourselves with the arms of light and walk with the winds or against the winds. Because the one thing that can always set us free is the truth. So we must do that. What happens with the emotional center? Well, many times we struggle with our moods. Sometimes we struggle with our sentiments, with our emotions, with our feelings. And the one thing that we can do to overcome those moods, to overcome those emotions, to overcome those feelings, well, Samael says we need to learn to stand at the center of the circle of Tao. You have heard us say that many times. I am afraid that not everybody understands that. So let's speak in terms of something a little bit more, we're going to say New Agey, for the sake of setting things in the time perspective. How about if we were able to raise our vibration? You have heard that many times. Oh, you need to rise your vibration. The one way that we can rise or raise our vibration is by willingly focusing on the opposite of the thing that we are experiencing. As a matter of fact, it has been written in ancient texts of wisdom that the great masters, they focus themselves on adhering unto a superior law. You've heard Samael say, we overcome an inferior law with a superior law. He says, a superior law washes away the inferior one. I'm sure that you can remember that. So what they do is that they look at the sentiment, at the emotion that they are feeling. They look at what is happening in that mood, and they will deliberately focus on the opposite. Because we understand fairly well the law of the pendulum. We know that we can go from contented to satisfied. We know that we can go from angry to laughter. We know that we can go from tears to happiness. And what has been written in these texts of wisdom is the masters, well, they will polarize themselves on the opposite. So if there is a gloomy mood, well, we will seek for those attributes of a mood that is perhaps spontaneous, that is joyful, a mood that is friendly, charitable. And by polarizing on that side, what the masters do is that they allow the pendulum to swing, but they do not swing with it. As a matter of fact, in these ancient texts, it has been said, it will appear that the master is overriding the law, but they are not. What they are doing is that they are embracing a superior law. And because we have a tenet, and that tenet is sacrifice for others, part of focusing on that superior law is a sacrifice of an internal nature. We have to realize that we are not doing it just because we want to feel good. But we must realize that we must do it because our gloominess and our inferior emotions and everything else emanates from us seeds of thought that pollute the environment and that affect everyone around us. And I guess that we can all agree that we do not want to be responsible for adding more suffering to the world. So we must then embrace that superior law. And that is what it means when somebody says to rise your vibration. Some people may get silly and say, really? Are you going to go from 6 hertz to 8 hertz? Look, that is just nonsense. We don't have to be speaking in terms of hertz. Nobody needs an oscilloscope. Nevertheless, we know in our heart what this means. And this is what we must focus when it comes to bringing this concept of serenity. It is not just being there calm, looking relaxed. This has to do with the harmony that must exist in the 3 brains of the human machine. And to do that, we must apply the 3rd factor of the revolution of the consciousness. It also requires that we are able of transforming impressions. It also requires of us to know how to apply the key of SOL. So as you can see, there is nothing that we have talked about in the last many weeks, months, and even years that it can be considered not important. Everything that we have touched upon brings a significant value, and it is time that we learn to integrate all of this wisdom. This is how we can bring in serenity. Because when we are at that state, then Chao happens naturally. Because then the consciousness dominates. The faculties of the consciousness then become more active and evident. They are less bound by the burden of the ego itself. And then in that reflection, we can truly see with the eye that allows us to see within the inner worlds. We can then understand the significance and the reason of things without relying on the logical process of thought. We can even experience the spiritual reality of the thing itself. And those 3 things together are different elements of the voice of the innermost, of the voice of the silence. So our practice tonight is the practice of Moshao. It is the practice of that serene reflection that we know that is more profound than that. Of course, after listening to this, we don't expect you to be an expert in doing this. But everyone in their heart knows and has received something that you know that you can make it truly useful. So let's start there. Let's allow these many seeds of thought just to go out and reach there, and let's allow them to land on a fertile ground in that philosophical earth so that they can grow and bear the fruit that is appropriate for each and every one of us. In the practice of Moshao, we are seeking a condition of the no thought of the clear consciousness. Harmony in the 3 brains of the human machine, a body that is relaxed, an emotion that is calm, an intellect that has ceased to project. And as we do this, we embrace the principle of spontaneity and we offer ourselves to the innermost, just as a fine and delicate instrument, so that the innermost can come and shock the consciousness, so that it can give it the necessary encouragement, motivation, energy, strength for us to be able to continue with this work. So what I'm going to ask you is that we lay down in bed. We're going to lay down, but we're going to lay down face up. And as we do this, we're going to relax the muscles of our body. And we are going to allow the mind to clear. We're going to ask you, don't think of anything for 30 minutes. How do we not think of anything? Well, we're not going to fight the mind. At some point, we have already learned the second jewel of the golden dragon, where you have to empower the consciousness to tell the mind, what do you want? You have to stop this. The consciousness needs to speak to that mind. So if you have to do that, empower your consciousness to reprimand the mind. But if not, that first jewel allows the consciousness just to be contemplative, to observe those thoughts as if they were birds soaring in the sky. They show up and eventually they disappear in the horizon. And then the consciousness even forgets them. And eventually the mind is going to get tired. We're going to do this, and Samael recommends that we do this practice 6 days out of the week. If you have been making your body comfortable with meditating every day, like for example, mid-afternoon, then it would be super easy for you to do this practice. Because now, rather than you sitting in a state of meditation, what you do is that you lay down. And then you maintain that remembrance of self, and you relax your body, relax your emotions, you relax the mind, and you observe your thoughts until the mind calms down. We know that at first, some are going to fall asleep, and that is okay. Here we're looking for small victories. If you're falling asleep, that means that you identified with a thought. That means that the thought itself, all the information that is captured in that mental image frame, you were fascinated with it, and you drifted into the sleep of consciousness. So notice what that was. If you have a Gnostic journal, take note of the last thing that you remember. And we come back and we keep practicing, because we know that this is psychological gymnasium. And we are not going to become Olympians of the mind, Olympians of the consciousness overnight. This is going to take some practice. So before we start, do we have any questions? Good. If that is the case, let's go ahead and let's start by laying down. Those of you who choose to not lay down, you are perfectly welcome to remain there, sitting comfortably. And let's start by closing our eyes. Let's make ourselves aware of the sensations in our physical body. And if there is anything that is distracting you, if there's anything that feels tight or uncomfortable, this is a good moment to take care of that. We focus on our breath and we take a deep breath in. 1, 2. 1, 2. And to start this practice, we would like to minimize any external influences, any thoughts that do not belong to us, that yet we may be able to perceive. We would like to avoid any influences, any disincarnated entities that may be wandering around, always looking for something to do. And to do so, let's recite the mantra Klim Krishnaya. Klim Krishnaya Govindaya Kopihana Vaya Vaya Swaha. For practice. Klim Krishnaya Govindaya Kopihana Vaya Vaya Swaha. One last time for practice. Klim Krishnaya Govindaya Kopihana Vaya Vaya Swaha. Divine Father, Father of mine, you who are my true being, you who are my eternal God, we're here humbly at your presence, asking of you, begging of you with our soul and heart for your guidance and for your contribution. Lead us through the exercise of harmonizing the 5 cylinders of our human machine. Allow us to embrace that principle of spontaneity and give us objective imagination, inspiration, intuition, so that we may see your guidance and also the courage to follow it. Guide us through the exercise. Indicate for us where the attention of the consciousness must go, so that the 3 brains of this machine can fall into perfect harmony, into balance and equilibrium. We ask that you empower the consciousness so that it may become contemplative of the thoughts, so that it may not identify with any of those impressions that exist within the realm of the mind. Help us find the opposite, so that, as Master Samael says, we can reach the synthesis. We offer you this practice, and we ask all of this in your holy name. So be it. Let's bring the attention of our consciousness to the soles of our feet. And from there, we bring that attention to our toes, our heels, our ankles, our shins, and our calves. And just like many times before, the sensation of relaxation does not make itself wait. And we know that this relaxation is perfect, because it clearly matches our level of being. And so we bring back the attention of our consciousness to our knees, the underside of our thighs, and we slowly feel how that sensation of relaxation permeates throughout that dense tissue of our thighs, expanding and reaching our sexual creative organs, our glutes, all the way back to the bottom of our spine. We focus the attention of our consciousness at the base of our spine, and we allow that attention just to gradually move upwards, one vertebra at a time. And as we focus in our breath, it is just as if every exhalation would enable the attention of that consciousness just to shift up just a little bit more. And as we focus on our breathing, and we continue with our objective imagination and our willpower, we feel that relaxation in our lower abdomen, in our internal organs, in our diaphragm, our stomach, we exhale, we even allow the body just to sink a little deeper onto that chair, onto that mat, or that mattress. We focus once again the attention of our consciousness back in the middle of our spine. And with every exhalation, that attention continues to expand and rise. And we relax our heart. We relax our lungs. We even bring relaxation into the tissues that make up our veins, our arteries, the conducts that exist inside the physical body. And we suddenly notice that the exhalation becomes really deep. And thus the attention of our consciousness reaches the top of our spine, and we feel that relaxation going into our shoulders, and from there gently cascading onto our elbows, our wrists, our hands, and our fingers. By now we experience a gentle softness that is so familiar. That gentle vibration that comes with a deep state of physical relaxation. And so we bring the attention of our consciousness back to the base of our skull, to that space behind our head that exists right there in between our ears. And as we remain watchful, we can even perceive the physical sensation that manifests right there where the consciousness focuses. And we allow that attention of the consciousness to expand. And we feel it expanding along the sides of our head. And we take advantage and relax the muscles of our jaw and our lips, our tongue. We relax our eyes, our eyelids. We relax the muscles in our forehead. And just as we do this, we feel that sensation of relaxation that continues to grow and covers every single space in our scalp. Use your objective imagination and your willpower and embrace the principle of spontaneity so that you can see that shining, flaming star, creating that circle of protection around you. And invoke of your innermost and allow for that gentle blue light to descend from the majesty of the heavens and penetrate in through your head, through that pineal gland, and inundate your head and down, saturate your lungs with that blue light. And notice how the sensation of relaxation strengthens itself. Divine Father, we give you infinite thanks for this new opportunity. Open us to embrace that principle of spontaneity and guide us so we may bring into balance those three brains in our human machine. As you follow that guidance of your innermost, let's bring those 5 cylinders into balance. As those cylinders harmonize, as the emotional center settles and stops its projections, we then allow the consciousness to exercise its faculties so that it becomes contemplative and that it can perceive the thoughts that emerge in the mind. We see them and we contemplate them the same way that we would contemplate a sunset, the same way that we would contemplate a beautiful flower. We contemplate and we let the thought flow without objections, without judgments. We may see from where it comes from. We may see the ego behind it. Nevertheless, we don't judge it. We are seeking to let the mind tire itself so that we may achieve profound serenity. Let's make use of some words of power to strengthen the consciousness and maximize the benefit of this exercise. And together we can sing the mantra Om Masi Padme Hum, O God in me. Let's do that 7 times. Om Masi Padme Hum. Om Masi Padme Hum. Om Masi Padme Hum. Padme Shom Om Mase Padme Shom Om Mase Padme Shom Om Mase Padme Shom. Divine Father, we give you infinite thanks for this opportunity. We give you infinite thanks for your contribution. Give us the strength and awaken in us the fire of longing so that we may continue with this practice day after day, week after week, until we find the ultimate silence, so we may experience the emancipation of the consciousness, and through you, the void. We ask of this in your holy name. So be it. So be it. Let's go ahead and take a deep breath in. 1, 2. And gently wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers so that you may come back into that body. Very well. Friends, and with that, that makes up our practice tonight. That is titled Mind in Silence. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening, and may all beings be happy.